Hey guys, Geoffrey here. In this video, I'm going to show you the key principles you need to know when you're dealing with someone or a partner who is stonewalling or becoming emotionally unavailable or shutting down on you all the time. And I want to show you here that with the right understanding of the right principles, stonewalling is not only a very common resistance that you face, but also a relatively easy one for you to get around and for you to remedy it as well. Now, this video is going to be a bit longer and more complex than most, but this is going to be a very big topic, and I want this to be the one-stop shop for you for understanding how to deal with stonewalling, not only in terms of the mindsets you need, but also the frameworks you need as well. And for those of you who are new to this channel, my name is Geoffrey, and I help men in long-term relationships or in marriages with the right skills and with the right knowledge to be able to design a thriving relationship for yourself. So if you want more content on this topic, then be sure to subscribe to this channel. And also click the bell button as well to be notified when I post new videos every single week. Now, before we begin this video, I also want to let you know that the free masterclass on the 5 proven steps on rebuilding your relationship from the ground up is still open. So if you want to join that masterclass, be sure to stick around to the very end of this video for the announcement on how you can join that. So the first point that I need to make here is sort of a foundational point. And we discussed this in a previous video before, but it's really about seeing stonewalling in a very different way. And so if you talk to a lot of people, the way they see stonewalling is really seeing it as abuse, seeing it as a narcissistic thing that the other person is doing, a really mean thing, a really malicious thing that the other person is doing. But it's very important that we change the way we perceive this, because without this change in perception, we can never really hope to even break through it. And so I'm going to run through this quickly, but I also appreciate here just how against the grain or how controversial this might seem, especially if you've been watching a ton of videos telling you about how stonewalling is really abuse and whatnot. So I'm going to give you a brief summary here, but if you have not already, I would check out the previous video as well to make sure you get the full context here of what I'm about to say. So the first point here is that you cannot deduce intentions from actions. So for example, one person can give $1 million to charity out of a good intention or out of a really bad intention. And the action is the same, is that they're both giving the $1 million to charity, but the intentions really determine whether the action is good or bad. The problem with this though is that the intentions are never really seen. So we often look at actions and we assume the wrong intentions from those actions. And this is exactly what we do when we look at someone stonewalling, which is an action, and we try to assume an intention from it. And the intention we often assume is one out of maliciousness, one out of abuse, one out of like just the evil intent from the other person. But rarely is it so, actually. And as the previous video talked about, usually is really because of the lack of safety, lack of trust, and lack of ability. And so it's more of a self-preservation method than it is more of a malicious intent usually. And the second principle to admit here also is that admit that you also have stonewalled. So there's going to be many moments when you struggle to feel safe with someone. Maybe you're dealing with a really bad person, really bad boss, really difficult person to talk to. Maybe you're dealing with someone who you don't trust anymore, who has destroyed trust with you. Or maybe you're dealing with a problem that's way too complex. And I'm sure that in those moments, you've had moments in your life where someone comes to you and says, hey, do you want to talk about it? Can you tell me more about it? And you just shut down because of all these 3 reasons. Because either too complex and you go, oh, I don't know where to start. So you just say, it's nothing. Or you just avoid the conversation completely. And that's, whatever you want to call that or not, is stonewalling. And this brings me to my third point, which is that in those moments, you're not stonewalling out of a malicious intent. There are other intentions, other reasons why people stonewall. So again, other reasons for stonewalling is really the hopelessness that you feel, perhaps. Perhaps it's the exhaustion that you feel. Or perhaps it's also the attempt of self-preservation as well from the lack of safety and trust, the lack of ability, or the lack of space that someone's giving you as well. And the fourth thing to align on is also, we talked about the trap of blaming character. So if you are still stubborn and you still choose to, regardless of what I said earlier, choose to see stonewalling and your partner shutting down as a sign of abuse, as a sign of narcissism, or a character problem, then whenever your partner stonewalls, you're going to get upset naturally. Because in your interpretations in your head, this is abuse. You feel abuse, so you're going to get upset. When you get upset, you blame their character. And when you blame their character, if let's say the reason is really the lack of safety and trust and the lack of ability, then when you do this, when you blame character, you're going to destroy trust even more, you're going to destroy ability even more, and you're going to make your partner shut down even more. And when your partner shuts down even more, you're going to conclude in your mind, because you're still guided by your own confirmation bias here, that, aha, I knew it. My partner is a narcissist. And this repeats. So you get angry and angry at your partner shuts down even more, and you get angrier, and this vicious cycle never really ends. And the whole time you will have no idea of the potential of your relationship or what your relationship could be, what your partner could be. And all it took was just you to simply shift your perspective, shift your mindset about stonewalling. So again, many of the things I'm saying here may be controversial, and a lot of you may be offended by this, I don't know, but if you want more context around what I'm saying here, then I want you to go back to my previous video. So I'm gonna put that link down below this video or also at the end of this video as well. Now, before I make my main point again, I want to give you one more caveat here. And I want to apologize in advance for, giving this video so many caveats, because I want to make sure that you understand this fully and it does not get misapplied. So 2 videos ago now, we talked about the 3 key principles that it takes for you to actually make your changes believable and regain trust and safety in your partner. The first principle here is it's not about the obvious, but the subtle. So it's not about what you say and do, which can easily be faked, but it's really about your micro expressions, your micro tones, the subtle things that you say and do that really makes a difference, because the subtle things are harder to fake and you cannot fake that. The second principle here is really not about the high points, but the low points. So, what you do when things are easy, when things are planned, that can be easily faked. But what you do when things are difficult, or when things are unplanned, when things are impromptu, that's when things are difficult to fake. And that's the part that matters. So it's not about the stuff that you do when things are easy, but the stuff you do when things are hard. And the third point here is really not about accuracy, but about accuracy plus precision. So it's not about doing the right things occasionally, so you can be accurate here, but it's about doing things accurately, doing things right, and doing it very consistently as well. And so accuracy here can be faked, but accuracy plus precision cannot be faked. It's really hard to fake that. And so if you want more details on these 3 points that I just made here, you want to watch the video that I published 2 weeks ago, and you can find that video down below this video in the description box below this video, or also in the end screen at the end of this video as well. So the reason why I bring this up is that I'm about to show you some scripts, some examples of what you can say and do, but I don't want you to see them as scripts because they're not going to work. Because it's really the things you do that are hard to fake that really matters. And your partner knows that using this as a script is going to be the easy part to fake. So what I want you to do instead is to understand the principles behind it and see them as just mere examples to really concretize these principles. And I want you to use these principles to eventually improvise your own approach. It's very important that you don't see this as a script. The second caveat that I want to add here, understand that a lot of the scripts I'm going to show you require you to showcase your changes. And so here, I'm assuming that you have done the work to actually change yourself. And I remember again that you cannot fake these changes, but we're going to assume here that you have changed a lot, and it requires you that you have changed a lot as well. So if you play out the scripts without actually backing it up with the internal changes, it's going to backfire. So just consider yourself warned on those 2 things, and let's get on with the meat of this video. So we established in the beginning here that one of the reasons why people stonewall, why people shut down, why you shut down as well in many different areas of your life is due to the lack of trust and safety. So to understand the mechanics of how this works, we have to understand what is called actions, intentions, and assumptions. So of these 3 things, notice here that only actions are visible. That's what is visible to the public eye, including your partner right now. But we also have to understand here that an action does not become good or bad until the intention comes into the picture. Right? So again, like that person who gives money to charity, he can give money to charity out of a good intention or bad intention, and that will color whether this action of giving to charity is a good thing or bad thing. But the problem again is that these intentions are not visible. They're not seen. And so because they're not seen, the only way we can assume intentions is to make our own assumptions, right? Assumptions of those intentions. So here basically your assumptions fuel your view of someone's intentions, and the intentions fuel whether action is good or bad. Now, the second point here is really about how confirmation bias plays a role. And especially here is the confirmation bias that your partner has from her past experiences with you. And the thing about assumptions is that they're subjective. For example, if I send an email out, maybe it's a testimonial email. Some people can assume the intention, a good intention here, that I'm trying to talk about my program and motivate them and inspire them. But some people also assume a bad intention in which maybe they think I'm trying to be manipulative, I'm trying to be like a snake oil salesman, too pushy, too salesy. But again, in those 2 instances, the action is the same. I sent an email out, but the email, depending on what people's assumptions are about me, changes their idea of what the intentions are, and the intentions color whether the email is a good action or a bad action. And if you're dealing with a lot of stonewalling and the lack of trust and safety, and assuming that you have changed quite drastically here, that's usually when your partner's assumptions about who you are still guided by the past, guided by her vision, her confirmation bias about who your old self was. So if we understand these first 2 points, we can also understand the nature of resistance from the lack of trust. So say the action here is that you ask a question to your partner. You try to start a conversation. And you could be asking the question from a very good intention. So maybe the intention is you want to make her heal. You want to make her happy. You want to show her that it's easy and safe for her to talk about her issues with you. But again, your partner only sees your actions, but she can never see your intentions. So guided by the wrong assumptions, the negative assumptions she has about you, she's going to make the wrong assumptions, the bad assumptions. Oh, the assumption here is that you're still your old you. Out of that bad assumption, she's going to assume a bad intention. And out of the bad intention, she's going to see your action as a bad thing as well. And that's simply what stonewalling is. It's stonewalling from the lack of trust and safety is simply when someone misunderstands one's actions, in this case your actions, and makes the wrong assumption of an intention from that. And that's all it is. So if you want to understand the mechanism of how you break through here, it's really about just understanding this phenomenon first, then slowly planting seeds to be able to get her to shift away from this negative intention or negative assumption of intention to the positive, what it actually is. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about how we can deal with stonewalling when the root of it is really the lack of safety and trust. Now, the first point I want to make here is really to show you the basics of persuading safety and trust, because if you look at the main goal here, the main goal behind our interactions is really to persuade your partner to feel safety and trust for you. So what is persuasion then? So we often think about persuasion as finding the perfect things to say, finding perhaps the perfect combination of words, the perfect logical set of arguments to convince someone, to persuade someone, but really that's not what persuasion is. So I want you to imagine here that you're having some pains in your chest and you go to 2 doctors to get 2 opinions. But one doctor was really able to not only diagnose your situation better, but he was able to describe your situation in such deep detail, so much deeper not only than the other doctor, but deeper than how you can describe it yourself. I mean, this doctor even points out pains and sensations that you haven't recognized yet. At that point in time, between the 2 doctors, you would trust the first doctor more. Because in the first doctor, you say, this doctor knows what's going on. He knows what I'm going through. It's almost as if he has been through what I'm going through. And so in that case, just by making you feel understood, making you feel like that doctor understands you, that doctor has persuaded you. And the same thing if you look at your choice of a mechanic, your choice of anyone, is begin to feel safety and trust for someone who you feel like understands you on a very, very deep level. And that's really the essence of persuasion. Persuasion is not about what you say, the logical arguments you say, but about your vulnerability and your ability to make someone feel understood. If you can do that, if you can do both those things, you are 90% of the way to actually persuading someone. And that's a very important principle to understand here. So once we understand that persuasion is really at the heart of what we're trying to do here, we can divide our efforts, our response to stonewalling in 3 different parts. So first is what I call the internal process. So first, I want you to shift the frame of the conversation. So when someone stonewalls, we often want to start explaining things. But instead of explaining things, shift the frame of your mind to understanding. This looks like you starting to look within first. So ask yourself, have you stonewalled like how she's stonewalling before? Have you experienced something similar, something close to what she's experiencing right now? And the third step here is to really add vulnerability and color to this thing and really let it land in you, really let it sit in you. So for example, if my partner's stonewalling me, maybe I ask her, how was your day? And she just kind of walks away. I would ask myself first, have there ever been a time when someone asked me, how am I? And I walk away. And I can remember when I was a kid, I used to do that to my parents all the time. And usually it's because when I had a really bad day, when I really don't trust my parents to really listen to me, and I think to myself, what's the point of even telling my parents what I go through? Or maybe it's me being too embarrassed about what I'm about to say or what's really bothering me. So let this past experiences really fuel you to really be in a compassionate spot where you can say, let me first understand where she's coming from, and then internally go to the place where you can say, you know what, I totally understand it. If I was her and I have been through in that situation before, I would have kind of faced and thought about it, felt about it the same way as she's doing right now. So the first step here is really just starting with the internal process of shifting the frame from explaining something to really getting to understand something in a very compassionate way. The second step is the actional stage. This is when we're actually saying something out loud. And this is the stage 1 of the external process, which is when we're simply priming our partner for persuasion, to be persuaded. First, thank your partner for stonewalling. I know this sounds weird, but just thank your partner for stonewalling. And show them why you're thanking her for stonewalling. So you might say something like, hey, this might sound weird, but thank you so much for stonewalling and shutting me down, because it really, you shutting me down really shows me just how intense whatever you feel is right now, like how hopeless you feel right now. I really feel that from you. So even though you're not expressing anything, not expressing something is actually an expression in itself. I just want to let you know that. And the second stage to this is really taking her back to what you felt, really showing her that you understand how she feels. So you might say here, for example, I understand too, because, there's so many times when I was a kid, for example, if my parents has been really, really, when I had really a bad relationship with my parents, and they always asked me like, what's going on? I always shut down because, one, I was too embarrassed to tell anything to them. I didn't have trust or safety with them. I didn't think they would understand, they would listen, and I know it's going to just bite me in the ass later. And the problem can also be so complex that I don't even know what to say, what to do, right? So this may be an example of what you can say. Then the next part here is really about recognizing that you may be wrong. So once you state, hey, this is what I felt, this is what I experienced, the next thing you should say is, but maybe you're feeling something different. Maybe you're feeling something more intense or something completely different than what I'm feeling. I guess tell me more. Tell me more about that. Here you're recognizing where you may be wrong and then ending it with, is it how you feel? Tell me more about that. Basically asking your partner to clarify things more for you. And if the answer is a no here, that's not how I feel, then it means that you really haven't understood what she feels, but at least now she's not stonewalling. You can use this and go into the next stage of the conversation, which is, oh, that's not how you're feeling. I guess tell me more about how you're feeling right now. Take your time. But if she says yes here, that's exactly how I feel, Jeff, then you can move to the stage 2 of the actionable process, which is what we call the planting the seed stage. And this is when you just simply say, can I tell you something from my perspective? Just start with that. Let her say yes. And then this is when you can say, here's my old self, here's the implications of it, here's what I've learned, here's my new self, and what my real intentions are. So for example, what you can say in the last stage is, can I express something to you about where I'm coming from here? I guess the old me would have been starting this conversation because you're right, it would be me trying to fix what you feel, control what you feel, tell you how you to feel. And I feel like whenever I did that, the implication was that it made you feel very unsafe. It made it difficult for you to talk to me. What I've learned is really the skill of just listening and understanding how to listen, understanding how to be there for you and creating that safety for you. So the reason why I'm bringing this up, even though the actions may be the same, is really that I want to start to show you here that talking with me doesn't have to be difficult. It doesn't have to be stressful. It can actually be quite healing. So that's really my intention here, just to show you that it's out of a good intention. And so that's an example of something you can say, just to plant the seed and explain yourself, explain your new intention and get her to shift from that old assumption of intention, the bad assumption of intention, to something much better, something more accurate to what you're doing today. And understand here, this is not a magic bullet that will get your partner to open up immediately, but it takes many consecutive weeks and months of application of this to really get your partner to open up. But as you keep following the principles that we outline here to really get your partner to open up, you will break through, just like how many of our clients have broken through. Now let's talk about the second part, which is the lack of ability. Now, I'm sure you had many scenarios in your life where someone asks you something about a problem that you have in your life, and the problem has gotten so complex that the only internal thoughts you can have is, you know what, I don't even know where to start. I don't know. And so externally, you're going to respond with, oh, it's nothing. Forget it. I don't want to talk about it. Now, the problem with a lot of people's approaches when they're dealing with people who are stonewalling is that they either ask questions that are too close-ended or too open-ended. So when you ask too close-ended questions, it's when you're making too many assumptions, asking basically yes or no questions, which make it very hard for your partner to really be creative and really tell you the complexities of whatever she's experiencing right now. But if you're too open-ended, that's when you're asking questions like, how do you feel? Tell me more, without any background or context to that. And basically these questions are way too broad for her to even understand how to answer. And so the second point is really about understanding the importance of creative constraints. So what is a creative constraint? A creative constraint is this phenomenon, it's this principle that when you actually add a constraint to a problem, to something, then it's easier for you to be more creative. So for example, if I were to ask you, hey, can you draw me a painting of something, anything in the universe, whatever it is. Now think about how easy or difficult it is for you to be creative, to conjure up something in your mind. But if I say, for example, draw me a picture of an animal in the beautiful nature, in the context of beautiful nature, then instantly it's easier for you to be creative at that point in time. So me constraining the scope of what the subject is actually makes it easier for you to be creative. And this is the same thing when you're dealing with people who are stonewalling. Sometimes the question can be so open-ended that it's hard to be creative. So here's what you can say. When you're dealing with this lack of ability, what you can say is, say what you are really thinking and feeling. Give your hypothesis, give your assumptions a bit about what you think your partner is feeling. And I want you to be able to summarize deeply as the previous point. Really put yourself in her shoes. Really take yourself back to other moments in your life when you think you've kind of felt something close to your partner or not. But the important part here is that once you express what you feel, what you think she feels, it's important that you also express your admission that what you think can be wrong as well. So this sounds like could be, for example, I totally understand how you feel because, there's many times in my life where someone asks me, what was the problem? And I just say, I don't know, because the problem is so complex, so difficult. And I totally understand how you feel, So I just want to tell you, understand that. And now I realize here that maybe I'm wrong. Maybe, my assumptions here about what you're feeling is really wrong. I'm not sure, but I guess, can you tell me more about what you're feeling right now? So when you say something like this, what this works is that it naturally adds creative constraints to that question because you're saying, well, here's a potential, a possibility of what you might feel. So if you can imagine a pie here, you're basically saying, let me define one half for you. Here's what I think you feel. Here's what I think you're going through right now. But I also realized that this pie has another side, this pie that I told you could be wrong. So what I want you to focus on when I say tell me more is to focus on this half of the pie. So you're adding that creative constraint naturally. Here you're also adding that vulnerability and showing your partner that you've also faced your inner demons. You understand the ugly feelings that she's feeling right now, and you show her that you understand it's complex, because when you show her that you understand it's complex, that's actually a really good starting point for understanding in itself. At least you're understanding something. If you can understand that one point, then maybe you can understand the next few points. But again, I want to set the expectation again here that this is not a magic bullet. You have to do this properly for a long time for you to really break through your partner's confirmation bias and really regain trust and safety. You cannot fake your changes here, and the conversation can go in many different directions, so don't use this as a script. See this, understand the principles behind this, and use it to improvise your own approach. So these are some examples of how we can use the internal shifts and the internal changing your paradigms, and also your understanding of the frameworks here to really dance around difficult resistances like stonewalling, for example. And in our program, in our Relationship Rebel program, being able to dance around resistance and really turn every single one from negative to positive is something that our students have really, really mastered, right? They learn many more frameworks and many more mindset shifts to be able to allow them to do this. So if you want to learn more about these processes, these mindset shifts that all my students have used to really rescue their relationship from a brink of a divorce, to their partner shutting down and stonewalling and not even talking to them even often, and creating a thriving relationship from there, then I want you to join me in my free masterclass on the 5 proven steps to rebuilding your relationship from the ground up. In this masterclass, I'll show you the exact process that I show all my students to get them these massive results. So if you want to join that masterclass, or if you want to apply for the Relationships Rebel program, then you can check out the link above my head, or also down in the comments below, or in the description box below this video as well. And if you want a free guide that shows you one of the other frameworks that we have in our program, and you can use that to guide conversations a bit better, then you can also download the free guide I have for you above my head and also down below this video. And finally, if you want to join a community where you can post your questions and actually get good advice from a member of my team or myself, then you can join me in my free Facebook group down below this video. In the meantime, do leave a comment below with what you thought was most insightful, most eye-opening in this video. I would love to hear from you. And if you like this video and found it to be eye-opening and insightful, then like it. It really helps the channel out. And also subscribe to this channel for more content like this one. For now, I'll leave you with these 2 other videos with more mindsets, with more skills for you to be able to design a thriving relationship for yourself. For now, I'll see you in the next video.